Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you are listening to this show, and welcome to Legends Rise, an Elder Scrolls Online podcast, where we educate players new and old about the game itself, whether it's how to run dungeons, discussing combat, chatting about crafting, posing information about PvP, gabbing about guilds, babbling about builds, and so much more. I am your host, Marcus Axford, and with me today is my co-host, the beautiful and lovely Queen of Cyrodiil herself, Lainy Kirkpatrick. How are you doing today, Lainy?
I'm doing good. A little bit of a long day, but this will be fun to get into. I've been looking forward to this one.
Yes, as have a lot of people, I imagine, up to this point. The build-up is very Marvel-like. Just teaching people combat and getting people ready for, the big bad world, the dungeons, the PvPing, the what, the end game content, the whatever, housing. We also have returning to the stage for the first time in a while, VenusFallen. How are you doing, Venus?
Not doing too bad. Long day of work, but glad to finally relax.
I thought he was going to say not doing too well. It's the damn smallpox again. I can't seem to get rid of it. It's a family show we're starting
I
off
feel
with.
like you and I should talk about that later, Marcus.
Um, something that I found out the other day, and by the other day, I mean this wonderful disclaimer that I'm going to say that kind of messes with everyone's perspective of time. Speaking of Avengers Endgame, my grandma didn't seem was a history teacher, by the way. I believe a high school history teacher. I mentioned smallpox and the Indians, and she's like, "What are you talking about?" Because I had a really bad reaction to sulfa as of recording probably a couple months ago, whatever have you, whenever this drops. And I said something about I made a joke that I'm not going to say on the show, but she's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Yeah, because the settlers, that's how they that's part of the way they wiped out the Indians was they gave them smallpox infested blankets." She's like, "Well, I never heard of that." I'm like, "How are you not? You're a history teacher." So,
Wow.
speaking of which, a little disclaimer. This is a pre-recorded episode due to scheduling with Venus, so we don't actually know when this episode is dropping, since as of recording, we are only doing the leveling systems and getting into our combat roles and things like that. But this week is our long-awaited PvP episode, and since these two know way more than I do, they will probably be taking up the spotlight. Also, another disclaimer, this is just going over general PvP, as the meta will have changed with the release of High Isle, which is probably out by now. But before we get into it, we want to remind you that Legends Rise is part of the Pop Culture FM network, and if you want to join our amazing community, you can come join our personal Discord server for Legends Rise, and links to that are on our Twitter or Facebook at Legends Rise ESO. We also have an Instagram where we post pics of our adventures, and you can find that at Legends Rise ESO as well. And we're on YouTube, so if you're listening to this through our podcast, you can find the links to all of our stuff in the description, and vice versa if you're watching this on YouTube. Finally, if you love listening to us here and you want more, you can go to patreon.com/legendsriseeso, and for $5 a month, you can get this show ad-free. You can get a shout-out on the show. You can message in with your comments and questions and have access to other cool stuff like exclusive merch, early access to bonus episodes, and exclusive Discord roles to access some cool exclusive stuff we are working on. You guys help keep the show going. Your money helps us solve problems that arise, like hardware failures on the fly, and we're able to upgrade equipment, do giveaways, stuff like that. So, with all that out of the way, let's get into it. I'm going to, I guess, kind of treat this a little bit like an interview, since I'm kind of dumb when it comes to PvP. I have done quite a bit in my day, but you figure that was probably a few years ago now, and the battlegrounds of Cyrodiil have literally changed a lot since then. So you guys are going to be more well versed than me. So for starters, what is PvP?
Well, I believe it stands for player versus player.
I think that's it. Last time I checked.
Is that the most in-depth answer we're gonna go with?
Well, that's the problem though. When you say that's like asking what is PvE?
Right.
Well,
No,
is
exactly.
is it trials? Is it dungeons? Is it vet dungeons? Is it pledges? Is it overland? Is it world bosses? Like, it's a very large scope of a section of the game. So it's very difficult to say what is PvP without more context than two players trying to kill each other.
Right, and of
Right.
course, even Cyrodiil and Imperial City can still count as PVE, as there's questing and bosses you can fight and stuff like that.
Well,
Well,
no, it is. There are quests,
It's
and
there are
I
spy
would
shards.
I would classify Imperial City as a PvEVP zone, since both of those are taking place simultaneously. But you're not wrong.
right, right. What are some PvP activities?
I mean, you have Cyrodiil, you have Imperial City, you have the battlegrounds that you can queue for in the group finder. You've got dueling, and Venus. Am I missing anything?
No, you're really not. So there are two types of PvP that essentially occur. There is these ZOS created content, the ZeniMax created content, and then there's the player created content. So ZeniMax created content is things like your battlegrounds that you get your daily for. It's Cyrodiil, it's Imperial City. And then you have player created content, which is dueling. For example, the most famous place to go is Stormwind if you want to go get your duel on. But there's also dueling tournaments as well as battleground tournaments that take place.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I know that there's guild events. I would say is another. Uh, uh, you could put that under PvP because while dueling can fall under that, sure, there's like dueling specific things. Like I know way back in the day, my first guild that I was ever into was the Grey Knights, if I remember right, and our guildmaster was a god tank. So one of the things was where it was dueling, but it was one-sided dueling. Your test as a DPS was to knock him down, and most people couldn't. And if you knocked him down, then there was special ranks and stuff like that. It was a really fun thing that we kind of all got into. So yeah, guild events.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's
I'm just
also like
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know there's like guilds that focus solely around Cyrodiil and different campaigns in Cyrodiil, which we'll get to in a little bit. And then there are guilds that I've seen that focus entirely around doing battlegrounds.
Yeah, and I guess we're eventually going to talk about it with guilds and guild traders, but that is definitely something that plays a big part into it is guilds, because I know that while there's guilds for a lot of different things, for dungeons and trading and this, that, and the other, PvP seems to take up the biggest slot when it comes to guilds.
When you say that, because now I'm curious. When you say that, what does that mean? As in, like, most of the guilds you see out there are PvP guilds, or PvP guilds tend to be more specialized than other guilds?
I guess you could probably, in a way, say both, but I would imagine I haven't gone guild shopping lately, but I do know that there is a lot of guilds, probably a predominant number of guilds. I'm afraid to misspeak, but I do believe that there is a dominating amount of guilds that do around PvP, because there's only so many times you can run a dungeon or a trial, and the PvP arena is quite different. Battlegrounds are different, Cyrodiil's different, Imperial City's different.
Yeah, you bring up a good point that I think we'll talk to later. But unlike something like a dungeon, which has mechanics that you can learn and you can essentially autopilot them on the lower levels, PvP is a very dynamic gameplay style. When you fight two different people, it's two different fights completely. But to your point of guild distribution, I would personally contend social guilds are probably the predominant, make up a predominant market share of the guilds out there. But you're not wrong. There are a lot of PvP guilds And when they operate, they definitely operate as a unit, or at least attempt to.
Right. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd say social and trading guilds probably take up the biggest chunk, but there are a lot of PvP guilds out there, and for the most part, you're gonna find PvP guilds are smaller guilds.
Really? Why do you
Unless
think
you
that is?
unless you're an AOC or an EPA or
Mm-hmm.
tier or something like that. Like there are very large Zerg style guilds, and there's nothing wrong with that kind of a play style. But most guilds, what Lainey was saying, most guilds typically are more, if they're PvP focused, you're talking, ball groups and less.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that's so you're able to coordinate easier.
There's that, and then there's just the PvP population being what it is.
Right. And there's normally several guilds in one faction. Now, Ravenwatch is the no proc campaign, which we'll get into a little bit. But each kind of faction has like 3 or 4 main guilds, and then there's some smaller guilds, and then there's guilds that people make just to clink keeps with to be funny.
There's another thing I'm looking at here that will have come out as of this recording that we'll get to here in a second. But I was reminded of the fact that yes, there is contention, and there has been for a very long time, between PvE content and PvP content when it comes to ZeniMax. Now, I really, not that I'm speaking poorly of them, but I still hate to speak in any criticism, because they are a good company, they do a good job, but they're only human, and we all make mistakes and we falter. But it has been pointed out very sorely, as actually, Venus, you pointed out to me last time after we recorded, that a lot of the staff made it clear that they just don't care about PvP, which is interesting because they could still incorporate a ton of PvE stuff into PvP and still make PvP as engaging. We talked about like the Imperial
Right.
City wandering world bosses and stuff. Those have created some really cool moments. Like I've talked about before, my encounter with other players and me tanking the boss and the other players actually helping rather than trying to kill me. But we'll get. I want to. I don't know if we should touch on the Rich Lambert part, but you did point that out to me, and I went to go see the video of this thing that happened in January, where Rich and some of the team have been pelted with the question of PvP. When are we going to get more stuff? All we want to do is have this part of the game be more elevated, because you have taken a lot of dedication over the years to do this. And then Rich has I'm trying to think of the word, put his opinions out there essentially about what he thinks of PvP.
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
Which,
my ultimate question,
yes.
sorry to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
Ultimately, why do you think this contention exists?
Well, to put it plainly, it is ZeniMax manufactured. And I'm going to explain myself real quick. The contention, because there's 2 types of contention here. There's between ZeniMax and the PvP players, and then there's between the PvP players and the PvE players. Because invariably, when something gets changed, one side gets mad at the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like, okay, they took away this ability because it was OP in PvP, and now we can't have it, or vice versa. I mean, it's the exact reason why you don't see in PvP a Templar running the bubble, their Templar bubble, because it is really strong and they had to tune it for PvE. So now it is essentially useless in PvP. So this happens both ways. But that, very specifically, that interaction, I believe, is a ZeniMax manufactured issue that they could fix using the mechanic that they already have in the game called Battle Spirit. If they ran all of their PvP changes through Battle Spirit instead of through the actual abilities themselves, they could essentially decouple PvE from the PvP changes, and they could balance the 2 separate portions of the game without affecting the other.
That's true. They could do that.
But to your point, why does the contention exist between ZeniMax and the PvP player base? And I'm not going to say that I'm some sort of expert with my finger on the pulse of ZeniMax here, but my essential guess, given the lead up of events and then the recent server changes, which removed the lag in the very, very laggy campaigns, I would say it is a return on investment that they're looking at. On average, PvP players spend less money in the Crown store than a PvE player or a housing player or a social player. So when they're designing content, rightfully so as a company, they need to design content for the group of people who are paying the most. Now, what this has done is essentially create this barrier. As we last year in 2021, we got the message that we're making no new PvP content until we get the server issues fixed. The previous year in 2020, they said, hey, we're going to run a year-long performance tests, so no PvP content. We need to figure out what's going on. In 2019, they said, hey, we're trying to fix the servers, so there's no PvP content until we can get this fixed. So we've gone back 3 years from today, and there has been exactly zero PvP content. And I think that's where a lot of the animosity has been building from.
Right, and I believe the last thing they did with PvP, besides, making Black Reach and Grey Host less laggy, was taking no procs out of Ravenwatch. Or
That's
taking
the
procs out of
last.
Ravenwatch.
That's essentially the last change they made. Now they've tweaked with BGs here and there, but if we're talking content, the last piece of PvP content was Volendrung, which was added in 2019. Previous to that, it was 2018, which is when the destructible bridges and towers were added, or the destructible bridges and gates were added.
Right.
So you have to figure we're in 2022. In 4 years, we've gotten exactly 2 pieces of what is essentially minor PvP content.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because
I mean,
previous to
that
that was the release of Imperial City in 2016.
Right, and they were even talking about how, hey, we're going to release some more Daedric artifacts besides Volendrung that are going to randomly spawn, and we haven't had that yet.
Well,
No.
and then to bring up your point, Rich Lambert even said on his stream, and I'll have to find the link for it, but he said that Volendrung was a mistake, that he hated it and wish it was never added.
Mm-hmm.
Has it been a mistake, or has it been an improvement?
I would say it depends on which way the wind blows.
I agree with that.
Volendrung can easily make some of the most epic fights on the map. It can give the faction that is being beat down to their gates the opportunity to take some ground back. But at the same time, because anybody can pick it up, if it's dropped, the dominating faction can pick it up and dominate more with it, thereby killing the campaign for the night.
Mm-hmm.
You think?
No, correct me if I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Venus. Volendrung is supposed to spawn close to the losing faction of the day, isn't it?
It has a higher chance of spawning based on which alliance is losing the overall alliance war for that campaign, and then ticks down to who has the most keeps resources scrolls.
So I was actually going to ask that or say something about that. Like, well, I would think that they could just make it to where, only the losing side has access to it rather than the winning side. I didn't realize that they did, in fact, keep the idea of balance in mind when they made this thing.
They did.
So that's good to hear.
Now, the
Yeah,
one
but
thing, and I can hear the comments now on the video. Oh, but I've seen X faction get the hammer spawn behind their gates when they have most of the empering. But what people forget is it doesn't take account only keeps. It keeps resources towns. It is total map presence or how much score you're going to get on the next tick.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm trying to think what my other question was for it, but I will move on to the thing that I was talking about earlier that's going to
Sure.
be out as of now when we're talking about PvP. PvP, of course, isn't just, two separate players hitting each other with swords. Now have Tales of Tribute, which is technically PvP.
Nah.
No, it is. It is technically
It tech-
PvP
technically it is.
in a
I
technical sense.
In a technical sense, it is PvP. Myself, I don't really consider it PvP, even though that's the technical term for it.
I guarantee you, once Tales of Tribute is released, it won't be more than a month before the first big Tales of Tribute tournament happens.
Oh, you're 100% right on that.
Guaranteed. It's going to, I believe Tales of Tribute is for the majority of the population is going to be oh, that's a thing. And then maybe play a hand or two, and that's about it. But there's going to be a subset that's going to Magic the Gathering the crap out of this game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be all the ERPers and Riften.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about when you were talking about how when it comes to abilities and stuff, one affecting the other. I was thinking, yep, Magic the Gathering, because the only reason that they ban cards is because in tournaments they're showing above average performance, game breaking performance, and they go, okay, this can't exist anymore. So then, of course, people who want to follow by the rules, that's why we just have house rules, because it's like, well, this is banned. Now, granted, things can be adjusted in this game for good reason, just like it is in Magic. But overall, it is frustrating, yeah, when you have where it's like, well, it's the whole sentiment of, well, I didn't do anything. Why am I being punished? I don't go there.
Right.
Why am I being punished for something I don't even play? So, but yeah, the Tales of Tribute thing, I'm really excited to see its potential. I think it will eventually, it may not gain its footing right away. Obviously, it's going to be new. It's going to have bugs, it's gonna stumble, but it's gonna be exciting to see if people get creative with it. Like, are people going to dress up, like try to get their characters as close to Yami Yugi as possible and have it's time to duel in the middle of the street?
Gosh. Yeah, the only thing more annoying than, random duel invites will be random Tales of Tribute invites.
Which they said gets an auto decline as well, thankfully.
Thankfully.
So. Although that may be... No, it has to be its own separate thing. I was going to say, maybe it's just under dueling, but it's not.
So I am hoping that Tales of Tribute is as successful as they want it to be. And I say this because there is going to be a subset of people who are going to enjoy this game very much. I think my only issue with Tales of Tribute is they staked an entire expansion on it.
Yes, that's exactly my issue with it as well.
I think that's the majority of the players' issues with it who don't like it. Not that a majority of people don't like it, but the majority of people who do not like it, the most common complaint I've heard is the game needs a lot of love. Why would they just make a CCG?
Because I've asked for it forever.
But there's a lot of things that other people have been asking for, and I'm not against the idea of the card game, but like Venus was saying, I don't think that it's enough on its own. I think it needs something else. Like, for example, Greymore, we had the Vamp Overhaul and the Antiquarian, and that was more of a two-part thing. Like, we need something else.
Well, and to be fair, since this episode is likely to release after High Isle, everything we could be saying is wrong.
That's true.
It could be a huge success, and I'm dueling right now. I'm dueling some rando in the middle of Mournhold and just whooping up one wall and down the other because I'm an old school MTG player, baby.
I mean, I've seen you 1vx like 10 people.
Just be like, the chess masters that duel or that play
Listen, I'm gonna
10 games at once.
I'm gonna be
Look, one-
Yu-Gi-Oh out here, right? Like I'm gonna have my deck, like I'm gonna have my painter's wheel on my arm with my deck laid out on it, just walking around going, I got the blue eyes white dragon, bitches.
I'm gonna
want it?
send
Come
you
get
to
it.
oblivion.
I'm gonna send you to the Shadow Realm.
I think one of the greatest mistakes I ever made in PvP was throwing the meteor on Venus as a joke, and then he wrecked my crap.
Well,
It was
you
joke.
deserved it.
Okay, to be fair, you had interrupted my music concert.
Okay, fair.
So you deserved that meteor.
So sorry, I was adding something because you mentioned something that I want to make sure that we dive into a little bit, and I
Sure.
don't forget. But yeah, just rounding out, the Tales of Tribute discussion. It is something where when I play The Witcher and I play Gwent, now granted, I mean, I could play Tales and be like, this isn't like,
Electrical Squint.
yeah, it's not what I was hoping for, but it's not bad. Or it could be like, oh wow, this is even better than Gwent. Again, we are right now talking just before High Isle is going to be releasing, so we are going to be doing a Tales of Tribute episode in the future. I guarantee it.
Joy.
I guarantee it, but we'll probably wait a little bit to let it gain its feet, and actually I'll learn how to play and be a little prolific at it before we say anything on it. But no, I looked at Witcher 3 and I looked at Gwent and I said, this is the most perfect thing you could put into an RPG. Now granted, like with Fable, I believe it was Fable, we've had pub games before, and I've enjoyed them, but there's just something about this where you can go challenge other NPCs and get their cards, and it reminds me of Pokemon card game on the Game Boy, stuff like that. It just, or yeah, like Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories on the PS1. I remember all these amazing card games where you challenged a person, you got their card, their signature card, a card, doesn't matter. Now, granted, this doesn't function the same, but I'm still hoping it's gonna be that. So that's what I'm kind of hoping for with that. Now that we're done with that rant, so I want to move into, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry if we're going all over the place with these questions, but you mentioned mistakes as a PvP player. Let's kind of go into that. What shouldn't we're going to talk a lot about what you should do as a PvP player, but let's go ahead and talk about what you should not do as a PvP player.
I mean, I feel like that's a very, very, very long list.
Well, I would yes.
Well, basics,
But
basics a newer player
the number one
might fall prey to.
The number one you should not do. The number one thing you should not do is get upset.
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
are you speaking to me?
Don't crawl up in your feelings like it's a warm weighted blanket.
I mean, that is a lot of what you see. Like, I mean, you get way more hate tells than I do, Venus, and it's just people being upset that you've killed them after they come at you with a group and didn't beat you.
And everybody is susceptible to it, right?
Mhm.
Everybody has been mad or aggravated or whatnot because, whether they believe that, oh, my break free didn't work, or that dude's using a cheesy build, or you get ganked by a Nightblade. Like, everybody has at some point been mad.
Right.
But the number one thing you should not do is let that translate into anger and rage.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're collecting Telvar stones.
Oh, so
Well-
if you die, you lose half your Telvar.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
no.
the only thing I gotta tell you on that one is you took the risk.
I don't think you killed me in IC.
I'm not talking you specifically. I mean, like, you as a collective people that we are
Oh.
talking to.
Rip.
Like, if you die in IC and you lose half the Telvar you have on you, you've learned a valuable lesson. Bank
Don't
your
walk,
Telvar more often.
don't walk around with 80k Telvar.
Don't walk around with 80k Telvar. You can queue for Cyrodiil while you're in IC. As soon as you hit 10k Telvar, you queue into Cyrodiil, go to the banker, you deposit all your Telvar, you queue back into IC, do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Because
Easy peasy.
I know that there's people that will run the sewers at the most sparsest time possible. Maybe it's early morning, maybe it's late at night, whatever, what have you. The least populated time down in the sewers, and they'll pull out enough Telvar to get their multiplier to 4 to max, and then they'll go around and kill things very carefully. Stay in your own, because so I guess we could kind of I just realized, are we done with mistakes, since there is a long list, but that's
Well, so there's a long list of mistakes, but those mistakes become opportunities for you to learn how to get better. If you have the mental fortitude to be able to, one, self-reflect and understand that you've made a mistake, and then two, accept that you've made a mistake, and then three, figure out why you made it and how not to make it in the future, right? But the number one mistake that I see the vast majority of people make is to get upset at the game or get upset at a player. If you're getting upset, you're not going to be able to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, that's a good summary right there, because that is probably the biggest issue you see people playing PvP is they get upset.
Number two, biggest mistake, stop AFKing on Siege. All right, if you're running Siege, get off the Siege after you fired it. Keep yourself buffed. Look around. Because you are just you're gank bait. If you're AFKing on a Siege, just firing a ballista away, eating your turkey sandwich at your desk, like you're gonna get ganked.
Oh yeah, 100%.
well, I guess we're just gonna kind of blend advice for new players and mistakes kind of into one.
That's fine.
Point. Because one of the pieces of advice I have, which, yes, surprise, I actually have a piece of advice. If you're alone, especially if you're like stalking people in Cyrodiil proper, when you see another player, don't necessarily just automatically go up to them and try and wreck them. Especially if you're like, because I have this example from playing as a werewolf in Vlastris, and I was just camping around the town for just whatever reason. And I would just randomly gank just player because it wasn't populated at all. Every once in a while you get a player come in, and it's just fun to just, wolf out and gank them and then go around and fight NPCs to build up your ultimate again. What I did, because I ended up seeing 2 people come in, so I'm outnumbered. I could easily get wrecked. So I paid attention to how they interacted with the NPCs to determine whether, okay, because if you're playing CP campaign, and keep note, you two, because we need to obviously go into that as well, because there's different levels of campaigns for Cyrodiil that you can go into: CP, non-CP, proc, no proc, blah. But, I believe I was playing in a CP campaign, and I'm just paying attention to these two because they were only like level 40 something. But that doesn't mean they're not backed by a crap ton of CP points. And they could just be people leveling up characters. So I'm watching them get wrecked by the NPCs. So I turned to a werewolf and I wrecked them both. So basically, it really is about studying other people and how they play. If you're alone by yourself and you're out trying to one-on-one with other people, or even a small group, pay attention to how they fight and see if you can determine if they're lower level by doing that.
Well, what you just described is something that I'll get into when we begin advice for new players, which is there's essentially a skill triangle when it comes to PvP, which is game sense, mechanical skill, and knowledge. Some people tend towards one or the other. For example, I am more on the game sense and knowledge side than I am on the actual mechanical skill.
Yes.
So that's where I get my strengths from, and you have to play to those strengths. What you essentially describe as game sense is recognizing your surroundings and not just, blindly Leroy Jenkinsing in and then dying because of it.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
and I will say, an addendum to that: use the mobs to your advantage. Let them do the fighting for you. If other people are engaging, especially if they're having a hard time, use that to your advantage. Try not to get aggro from the other stuff, and that way you're able to kill people faster doing it that way too.
Well, and if we're going into kind of some advice for new players, if you don't mind, I should probably give some credentials about who I am, since I'm not exactly a regular here at the moment.
I was thinking about that, but I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah, talk about yourself, Venus.
And it's not really talking about myself. It's more of a, like, hey, this is why I have this advice, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've been playing this game since beta. I've been inside of Cyrodiil since beta. Well, since launch. I have played through every meta this game has had to offer. I personally, I run solo a lot, so I do what's called 1vxing, where I try to fight outnumbered against groups by myself. I duo with a friend of mine fairly often. I like to do small man content, where we get about 4 to 6 people and go and try to fight bigger groups. And I also am a member of a ball group, as well as fill in for another ball group when they need a slot. So I typically play no CP, but I also I'm locked in Grey Host. I play Black Reach. I play BGs. I do duels. My guild that I run is called the Police. We are a Ravenwatch ball group guild and small man guild. I have run with such guilds like Vehemence, Omni. I can't remember if I subbed in for Cutest Boys at one time, but that would have been years ago, and I don't remember. Anyways, I have run with a fair few ball groups. I damage and I heal. My favorite is healing. That is my favorite thing to do, is PvP healing. That's what I love. But I do play damage as well and support.
Okay.
That's me.
Excellent. Well,
Please
I've
don't
been
ask
playing
me
this
to
game
list
for
my
far too
credentials.
long.
you mentioned a lot of different activities there. So we talked about different different modes of PvP.
Yes.
From doing Tales of Tribute to doing player-made guild events to doing the ZOS content, Imperial City, Battlegrounds, Cyrodiil. So let's talk a little bit about I guess we would have to go top.
Well, if you'd like, I can prompt you.
Well, also Lainy, your notes that you sent me, what the heck? Because different game modes of those activities. Okay, I see. Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
so
I'm
what I
reading
mean
right.
what I mean by that is, so you have Cyrodiil, you have different campaigns within Cyrodiil. As Venus mentioned, there's an Alliance Lock campaign. There is, and that one's CP enabled. There is a no CP, no proc sets campaign, and then you have your regular CP non-Alliance Lock proc enabled campaign. And then you have the different modes of Battlegrounds. You also have a no champion point Imperial City and the champion point Imperial City.
Oh,
And that's where it is for a newer player, somebody trying to get into PvP. It is not very intuitive where you should go, what you should do, and for that matter, what gear you should wear. Because there's essentially 3 completely different forms of PvP. There is no proc, no CP, which is Ravenwatch. There is yes to procs and yes to CP, which is Black Reach and Grey Host. And then there is, confusingly, no CP, but yes to procs, which is Battlegrounds.
Okay. Now, remind me, Venus, the under 50 campaign 0, I know it's no CP. Is it no proc?
I believe it is proc, actually.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. There's a below CP, or yeah, there's a
we
1
don't-
through 50 campaign.
We don't talk about that one.
Yeah, we don't talk about it. You know, it's kind of like the green bean casserole at Thanksgiving. It just kind of gets pushed to the side. It exists. Hey, man, we acknowledge you're there,
But that's
but
about it.
nobody's going to really partake.
I like a good green
Right.
bean casserole.
You know, the last time I remember like the under 50 campaign being like actual topic of conversation was back when champion points was enabled and there was a certain guild just farming it to get people imp.
Yes, I do remember that actually. There
Mhm.
was a guild you could join, and by join, I mean you pay the entrance fee to join in gold, and they would essentially carry you to an emperorship on that character. Do it in the below 50 campaign.
Yes. Now, I don't know which guild you're talking about. I was thinking about AA.
Oh yes. Well, let's not name and shame.
Right.
But I know what you're talking about there. That is not the guild that I'm specifically thinking of, which we can talk about offline if you're curious. But
Yes.
there are in any game there's going to be people who try to exploit the system. Like that's
Of
just
course.
how it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, and let's not forget the most hardcore PvP activity of them all. Fishing.
Okay, fishing in Cyrodiil gives me so much anxiety.
Listen, fishing is serious business, all right?
Oh, I don't know. You haven't been fishing in a while.
Listen, there is no better in Cyrodiil. There is no better title that you can flex than Master Angler.
But you don't have it, do you?
I do not. I'm working towards it.
I will say, yeah, okay, technically, fishing is a very minor PvP thing because to get a shot at, reeling in better quality fish for the Master Angler title, more people need to be fishing out of that fishing hole with you.
Wow,
But you could probably
that
do it
makes listen
solo.
that makes dungeons PvP.
Right.
There's also the Arteum pickled fish bowl buff food that will basically, it'll give you the buffs
Listen,
of
I tell
having
you what,
another person there.
Let's get back on topic. But if you ever have a fishing stream, I'm totally in.
Okay.
Oh, I will say, talking about our conversation from earlier, because I had this thought, and actually I had a question attached to it. Before we move on to, I think we'll go to PvP events next. So we were talking about, what, that the game needs improvements to PvP. Now, my question is, and before you answer, I'm going to follow it up with an idea. What do you think needs to come next to improve on PvP as far as content? Because, granted, it was eons ago, but in Morrowind we did get Battlegrounds, which is your, basically your multiplayer, Halo-style arena mode. What if the next PvP expansion was a one-on-one arena?
I think that is an interesting idea.
Because I'm thinking of from Oblivion, that arena from Oblivion, or even Kvatch Arena.
Right. I think it is an interesting idea, but I don't think that that's what the game needs next for PvP content. The number two, I'm listing two things here, that PvP needs is number one, a leaderboard, and number two, better rewards.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, then I guess we're going to go into the current reward structure then, is the next thing. Hold on, we'll get to PvP events in a sec.
Just to kind of to sum that entire topic up of the current reward structure, I will pose this question to you. What reward structure?
I don't know. Lainey's the one who wrote it down in the notes.
That's the point. No, that's the point. There is no reward structure for PvP. You get rewards for the worthy, and you get an equivalent for that if you play Battlegrounds. There is a Battleground daily that you can pick up that will give you extra, stuff. And then there's also the Cyrodiil quests that you can pick up for extra alliance points. But that is essentially where PvP rewards stop.
There are the style pages from Battlegrounds too, which are kind of
They're
But that's the problem, though. It's all cosmetics that nobody is chasing because they're not well done cosmetics.
That's true.
Okay, I will argue that the Stormlord sword is the only good looking sword.
I will argue that till Kingdom Come. I hate the look of that sword. There's so many
Really?
better ones.
Oh, I love
Just-
it. I've looked through the entire catalog and nothing for me beats. But hey,
I
to each
can't
their own.
I can't pronounce it, but the
Is
most
it the new
recent
one?
motive, yeah, the most recent motive that allows me to run around with twin katanas kicks the crap out of the Stormlord sword.
Oh, I haven't seen
I
that.
mean, there's no contest with the Stormwood sword anyway.
I also
It's a
don't
shitty
like
sword.
slender blades. I like big, giant
You
swords.
like girthy blades.
Yeah, I like girthy blades. I don't like katanas. I don't like sickles. I don't like oh god.
Give me a second. I'm just texting your wife that. No, no, and that's fair though. So cosmetics are, of course, something that everybody is going to have a different opinion on what they like and what they don't like, right? What I'm talking about is those are just like things that they give you for playing. It's similar to a login reward in the mind of many players, let alone PvP players. I think a great example of a reward is in Cyrodiil, people joke that it's the horse simulator because you're on your horse and you're riding so long. Why not, if you hit Grand Overlord or at the different alliance ranks, why not be rewarded with a mount that you can show off?
Where all you get is a skill point and a title and sometimes a crappy die.
Like if you got a warhorse, like a really decked out, regal looking warhorse.
That's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Like when you get Emperor, you are given as a reward, you get the title, and then of course when you lose it, you have the former Emperor title. But you're also given a die and a costume. Now the die is okay, it's a thing, right? It's like a blood red. But the costume is 110% garbage.
Oh my god, it is. It does not look good.
There's not a single person you will find with that costume on.
Well, actually, one of my characters has it on.
Okay, but so still garbage. Point still stands. Now, there is no viable reward structure in PvP. There are no real leaderboards, right? So if you look at the battleground leaderboards, because they do exist, many people don't know this, but there are battleground leaderboards. But what that is measuring is the amount of points you have earned in battlegrounds for that 7-day period. It has nothing to do with win-loss record. It has nothing to do with kill-death record, and it has nothing to do with contribution record. It is all objective points. And there's no reason to have it.
Yeah, like if you had a leaderboard of people, and if you clicked on that person, you can actually see their stats, how many keeps they've taken for the month, how many, like you said, resources, how much damage they've done, how much healing they've done, little scorecards for each person to see the stats, and then they, of course, reset for the month.
Yes, that would be fantastic.
There are the end of campaign rewards, but they're so easy to get. You can get like some PvP gear from.
I've been rewarded with a ton of gold for not like 50,000 gold for not even really participating. It's because I just jumped in one time.
Yeah, so for those who are unaware, the tier system for the Alliance War is tier 1, 2, 3. You only need tier 1s to qualify. Tier 1 to qualify for end of campaign rewards. The higher tiers just amplify that. And for that, you only need 25,000 AP. That's one keep fight.
Yeah.
You participate for 10 minutes in one keep fight, 25,000, you got your tier 1, you can log out of that character and never do it again.
Yep. And a lot of the reason people do try to get their tier 1s is you get 50 transmutes at the campaign. I got 600 transmute last campaign.
So it gets even better. You get 50 for your tier 1. You get an additional 50 if your tier 1 and your alliance wins.
Mm-hmm.
Per character, mind you, character. So when I go do this on my 7 level 50 characters, I will spend them in 2 days, but at least I get a bunch of transmutes.
I got 600 last campaign, spent it all in a day.
Yeah, absolutely. They easy come, easy go. But that is the only rewards there is no rewards to continue to PvP outside of the joy of PvP.
Right, and the leaderboard system isn't great because it's alliance points, right? You can easily farm alliance points up. Like the first day of the campaign of this most recent one, I saw like people in the millions after the first night because it's easy to farm.
I would disagree with that point, that it is easy to farm, because it is not easy to farm, and you have to put in 18 hours a day to do stuff like that.
Okay, to be fair, it took me 3 days to emp, so I do understand that. However, my point is that there is ways to farm it like there is any way to exploit something.
Well, I wouldn't call farming exploiting, because it's not.
Well, I'm
Now,
not.
if they're you just did, but if they're AP sharing, then yes, that is an exploit. And actually, people have been banned for that. But there is a way to efficiently farm alliance points in order to get EMP as soon as possible. You're absolutely right about that. So the point here is tier 1 is very easy to get. There are no rewards and there is no structure to keep people inside of Cyrodiil, to keep people going to Battlegrounds, to keep people going to IC. There is no structure in order to retain players in those activities outside of the players enjoying those activities for the activity itself. Unlike, for example, pledges.
I hate pledges.
I was gonna say, yeah, really the only thing that makes me go into PvP is just the sheer thrill of knowing that I'm gonna be eviscerated any second.
Yeah, right,
mean,
no, but
some
that's the
people are
thing,
into
though,
that,
right?
Marcus.
Some people pay good money for that. But you're right, though. A lower skill level player, and I'm not saying that you are, I'm just saying in general, from my experience, a lower skill level player will avoid doing two things. They're going to avoid not running in a giant group, because there is strength in numbers is a legitimate thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're absolutely going to avoid the campaign unless they can do that, unless they know they can win. The average player is wants to win and doesn't want to play something that they can't win.
Right.
Yeah, no, I understand that, because that's one of the reasons, well, not one of the reasons, that is a reason that I might be in the mood for PvP, but I'm not in the mood for getting my skull crushed in. So, like, it's like, oh, I want to go up to Bruma and hang out there and just do dailies or whatever, especially if it's if it's an event tied to questing. Because like that's 10 rewards just for each city, so you can. That's where people go when like you have Jubilee event and stuff like that, where you're getting rewards that are tied to doing dailies.
Absolutely, and to kind of further that point, if you want a quick fix of PvP, what do? You go Battlegrounds,
right?
I mean, you're talking a 2-minute queue, you play a 10 to 15 minute match, and then you're done. Cyrodiil is not a quick thing. It is a long investment of time. And people aren't going to invest that time unless it's worth their time.
Again.
And unless you're a top tier player who's running around as a solo, taking on 10 players and blowing them up, like you're not going to be getting enjoyment out of that. It's not enjoyable. Like way back in the day, it was not enjoyable for me to get absolutely X'd out of a group, have a group of 5 people, and then one person blow us all up. Like that's not enjoyable for me. It's enjoyable for that one player, but it's not for me.
Yeah, no, again, I have enjoyed the long time spent. We get friends together and we would be, sieging keeps or just running around Cyrodiil. And I'd be looking at a clock and it's like 4 a.m. It's like, oh, wow, I got to go to bed. So.
Yeah, and because Cyrodiil is a spectacle. And that's the thing that they should lean into. It is a sensationalization of a war. That's something that people can really get behind. It's the reason why DAOC was such a popular game. It's the reason why, to this day, PlanetSide 2 not only has their servers still turned on, but they have thousands of players playing every single day.
Damn.
Because that big, like, sensationalized war going on, those giant fights, that draws people in for the sake of the fights. Cyrodiil doesn't have that anymore. Not really.
Right. Yeah.
They need to make a reward structure, and they need to focus on what makes Cyrodiil fun versus the mechanics behind it,
Right.
in my opinion.
I agree.
Well, we are running a little low on time, so there's a couple more things I want to cover,
I
and then we can call it
apologize.
good. No, you're fine. This has been a fun episode. In fact, so we're gonna talk about real quick PvP events, specifically Mid-Year Mayhem, and I know. Again, we're recording this towards the end of May, not to keep reminding everyone and shattering the illusion. But we do have Mid-Year Mayhem coming up, and I thought maybe what we could do to celebrate, regardless of where we are in our process, we could probably drop this episode to celebrate Mid-Year Mayhem.
That'd be a good idea. Now, Venus did point out something to me before we recorded, and that is there's a second PvP event in September that focuses on Imperial City.
I mean,
Yeah,
we can
it's
always come back and talk about Imperial City.
yeah. So there's essentially 3 PvP events a year. I wish they would space these out once every 4 months for a good cadence. Unfortunately, they don't. They take place in the White Strake Mayhem is what they have renamed Mid-Year Mayhem to, because it now takes place twice a year. So January, June is White Strake Mayhem, and then September is the Plane Meld Palpitation event, aka the Imperial City Celebration event. And we can talk about the differences between the two real quick if you'd like.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Would you like to explain Mid-Year Mayhem, Lainy?
Sure. So, White Strike Mid-Year, which I will always call it Mid-Year, because just gonna do that. So you're gonna get, so there is a double experience while you're in PvP areas like Cyrodiil, IC, and so you're also gonna get double alliance points while you're in there. So like if you're trying to farm alliance points, White Strike Mid-Year, whatever you want to call it, that's the best time to do it. There's a quest at the BG Daily Quest Giver, and then at the gate in Cyrodiil, you do the little quest, you get the scroll, and it lasts for 2 hours. You just have to keep using it, kind of like, the Jubilee Cake or, the Jester's Pie. But it's going to be sitting in your inventory. So you're going to see a lot of people running the town quest then, every single day. So if you're trying to gank towns, I would not recommend you do it during Mid-Year Mayhem, unless you know that you can get away with it.
Somebody help me power up my werewolf quick.
Right? And then so that's essentially what Mid-Year Mayhem is. And then the IC celebration event is essentially similar. So it's about 2 weeks long, similar to Mid-Year. And instead of double AP, because you don't get AP in Imperial City, instead you're getting double Telvar, key fragments, items that are dropped by the Trove Scamps and the Cunning Scamps, and all the boss loot is doubled.
So you better be queuing into Cyrodiil a lot more.
And that's when the IC celebration event comes around, I play exactly one character, one class for the entire thing, and it's my Nightblade. And I run around and I gank the crap out of people.
It's fun, isn't it?
Well, last year, to kind of put that into perspective, last year I think I killed a singular boss in the IC event, and I ended up making about 2.5 million Telvar.
Yeah, makes sense.
Just running around ganking people. But that's since for those who aren't aware, you can use Telvar. 5,000 Telvar buys Hockey Joe, which is one of the key rune ingredients in the Prismatic Defense enchantment. Is that not correct anymore?
No,
it is.
Okay, because you shook your head at me. I
She
wasn't
doesn't-
sure. Like
she doesn't
I'm
like
shaking
it.
your head because all your builds need like 7 of those prismatic glyphs.
okay.
Yeah, I've heard complaints from her. That's why I know she's shaking her head.
I mean, yes. When I give a build, or when I theory craft a build, it is with the intention of being as min-maxed as it can possibly be, which typically involves very expensive things like gold jewelry, and prismatic defense enchantments.
Oh, by the way, I'm glad I did not forget about this because it's new, so I haven't fiddled with it. But they recently released the Torts as a double.
Recently?
Yes,
Uh,
the War Torts
Greymore,
within the last year.
Greymore, or yeah, I
Was
think
it Greymore?
it might have been
I thought
Greymore.
it was before that.
No, not before that. Definitely not. It
Wow.
was at least Greymore at the very earliest. So yeah, and that's basically PvP double XP thing, kind of like how Ambrosia and stuff like that is for like non-event related double XP items.
Now I will point out really quick with the torts. They do not affect your leaderboard. They only affect your alliance rank leveling.
Okay, yeah. I wasn't sure. I haven't messed with them. I know that people have made millions of gold off of finding them in the world. I think I tried going around Cyrodiil once, just picking up nodes, hoping that I get one, but it's like that shivering cheese. It just keeps eluding me.
I did the thing where I just bought my War Tort recipes off the guild vendor.
See, I found like 3 of them myself.
Go ahead.
So I will make a quick note here, Marcus. They are not in resources. They are this little green glowing book that you'll find, and it's a very, very rare drop, which is why it's worth like 2 mil on PCNA. But you're not going to find the resource nodes. It's going to be its own little green glowing book. You can see it from a mile off.
Okay.
It's easier to find at night too.
Okay,
But it's not going to be in a resource.
Somebody said they picked up something to do with the torts off of a resource.
They lied.
Well,
it can
off
spawn
of a
in
resource is not the same thing as a resource node in Cyrodiil.
Well, that's what
Correct.
that's what they're saying, a resource node.
Okay.
It can spawn in the place of a resource node. Like,
maybe
but
that's
it's
why.
not going. But it's not. But if you open a resource node, it's not gonna ever be in one of those.
It's not similar to like ethereal dust.
It is a green glowing book on the ground.
Okay.
And just to kind of, when this actually released was update 28 Markarth.
Okay.
Is when the War Torts came out.
Oh,
Okay, yep,
really?
yep.
It was the one of the last updates of 2021. Like
I
it
thought
was
it'd been out
recent.
longer.
But what they do is, I think you already explained it. It's essentially increased alliance points. It's similar to an experience scroll, so you gain increased alliance points. I will note, however, that these alliance points, the extra percentage increase that you get, do not apply to your alliance leaderboard rank. So you can't just use them to get Emperor faster.
Lainy,
Said that,
you're
man.
like, I just said that.
Oh, did you? Sorry.
Yes.
I was reading when they came out because I was trying to be diligent. Excuse me.
Wow. Well, sassy, aren't we?
So,
Yes, you are.
Now that we've gone off on that tangent, I know we're running a little
Yes.
late. I think
Yes.
we pretty much covered the events, right?
I would
Yeah.
say so.
Okay.
I encourage everybody to come out to the events. They are fun. Get your, like, even if you're a solo PvE player and you've never been in Cyrodiil before, hop in zone chat and look for a group.
I will advise caution if you are a warden. Don't run your netch in a prop campaign. Just don't.
See, I tend to disagree with that.
Because you like to kill people with them.
No, I tend to disagree with that because Plague Break as a set, while it is devastating, it is more devastating to ball groups than it is to random Zergs because of the closeness. It's the same.
Okay.
It's the same concept as Vicious Death.
Okay, that makes
One
sense.
going off isn't going to kill anybody. 16 going off is going to wipe a whole Zerg.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense.
So, last thing on the docket. And this is a good question to end on, really, because it's just kind of a general need to know. What's the easiest way to get into PvP as a new player?
Hop in.
Hop in, yeah.
In all seriousness, if you're looking to get into Cyrodiil, hop into Cyrodiil. Make sure that your faction has some population. Hop into Cyrodiil. and just ask in zone, see if there's any groups going on. In each of the campaigns, there are people who run what we call pug groups or pickup groups,
Mhm.
where they just have a group that is open. Anybody can join. You don't have to be in Discord. Just it's literally just follow the leader. You follow the
Mhm.
crown. The crown will usually say stuff in both voice chat if you're in there with them, as well as in group chat. And yeah, that is the easiest way. Get in. It's a 5 guild game. Find yourself a PvP guild.
Yeah.
Ask for help. While there is a lot of, um, like, how do I say? I can't think of the word. There's this air of toxicity around PvP that I just think, while it does exist, that's because it's a video game. There are plenty of people who are out there willing to help.
Right. And, I run a lot of pug groups during the events, and that's where I've gotten a lot of recruits from my, PvP guilds. And oftentimes it's people that are trying to get into PvP, so they try it out during the event. And, some of them stay, some of them don't, but I've met a lot of them who did stay.
Excellent. All right.
Yeah,
Well, I think that wraps it up, right?
I think so.
I would
Excellent.
say so.
Awesome. That is it for this episode of Legends Rise. Thank you all so much for joining us. And remember, if you want more stuff, you can check out our Discord. Once again, the links to those are on our Facebook and Twitter at Legends Rise ESO. Come be a part of the fun and make some new friends. And if you want more out of your experience, you can go to patreon.com/Legends Rise ESO and become a Legends Plus member. Music is Sons of Skyrim Epic Metal Remix, edited by me and performed by Brandon Strader, and you can find him on YouTube and Facebook at Bestrader, that's BESTRADER. Lainey, where can the fine folks find you at?
Well, as always, I'm on PCNA under the tag Adexi the One-Eyed. There's a little dash between one and eyed.
Venus, where can people find you at?
So in game, I am VenusFallen ESO. I also have at Venus_Fallen on Twitter, which I'm aptly named the theory crafter of random bullshit. And on Discord, find me in game, find me on Twitter.
Perfect. And again, as of recording, I'm not on PC yet, but you should be able to find me as of dropping this episode on PC under Everyone's Problem. Capital is a 0 with no E at the end. Also, same gamer tag on Xbox as well, although because ESO is going to be my primary on PC, or I'm at least going to attempt to this time. I mostly play things like Minecraft and Halo on Xbox. So, alrighty. I was gonna say, ladies and gentlemen, is an apt thing. Sure. Do we have anything else?
I think that'll be it. We've gone over the general base of PvP. I'm sure at a later date we'll get more into the nitty-gritty meta stuff.
Yep.
And we can definitely do that if you're interested, because I am very much a master when it comes to the mechanical numbers of ESO.
It's true. I've literally sat in the voice call with him and the police guild while he just theory crafts.
Well, and then the next time we do a PvP episode, I'll be excited to have more stories myself because I'll be running with you guys.
Mhm.
And again, we do want to do a Tales from Cyrodiil kind of episode where we just talk about like the experiences we've had with PvP over the years. I've told my werewolf story. I know I've have stories about how fun it was for me to hide in a keep after it got taken back by the enemy. those
I'm in a guild that does exactly that,
those
and we're all
situations
Nightblades.
are fun. Yep. Until you realize you have to actually siege the door in order for it to actually register that you're recapturing it, which is kind of annoying, but whatever. So, alrighty, guys. Until next time, we will see you in Tamriel. Cue the music.